This video is kindly sponsored by Squarespace. Let's do this! I had a lot of fun researching this one. A gaggle of geese, a kindle of kittens, a bike of bees, a shrewdness of apes. English has all kinds of silly and strange words for when a load of one thing hang out with one another, be they animals or be they people. Some you've heard of, some you probably haven't. These collective nouns, as they're known, raise many questions, like what's so murderous about a murder of crows? How can a school of fish be a school? And where on earth did all these come from? So what weird and wonderful ones do we have, and where did we get them? Let's find out in another RobWords. A peculiarity of English is just how many words for specific groups of animals, people or things there are. I don't know if speakers of other languages have so many collective nouns at their disposal. The interesting thing is, though, it wasn't always the case. So many of these collective nouns spring from the same period, the 15th century. They were coined in their hundreds in what were known as courtesy books. These had titles like The Complete Gentleman or Proper Terms, and aimed to describe to aspiring young courtiers how to behave in polite company. You'd need to know and use these terms correctly in order to ever be accepted as a true gent. The most prolific coiner of collective nouns was the writer of a fantastic yet bewildering book called The Book of Saint Albans, or The Book of Hawking, Hunting and Heraldry. As well as offering explanations of how best to hunt, train a hawk or behave in court, often through the medium of rhyme, it describes the terms for groups of all manner of animals and indeed people. Under the title The Companies of Beasties and Fowlies, I found over 160 of them. It was printed in the late 1400s on what some say was only the third printing press ever in England. As such, the language is pretty dense. So I popped a page of these on my Twitter in the hope of getting some help from my followers in deciphering them, and we spotted some absolute gems. Check out a clattering of chuffs, a watch of nightingales, a walk of snails, a herd of harlots, and my personal favourite, a business of ferrets. Thanks to everyone who pitched in, including all of these guys here, although there were others. But that is just one page of a list that lasts for 3 pages. Buried elsewhere are a mute of hounds, a skulk of foxes, a covert of coots, and a lot of, at times, unflattering collective nouns for people too. There's a fighting of beggars, a gaggle of, not geese, but women, a impatience or impatience of wives for extra misogyny points, a threatening of courtiers, an abominable sight of monks, and a drunkship of cobblers. I am never going to get bored of that list. Let me just bring it up again. Click pause here if you like and have a look for yourself and let me know of any good ones that you spot and pop them in the comments. I'll give you a few seconds. And we're back. Now, some of those had already appeared in similar documents, but it is thought that the writer or writers, we're not sure the same person wrote the entirety of it, of the Book of Saint Albans coined many of them. Some of them actually as a joke. This was written at a monastery and it refers to a group of nuns as a superfluity, suggesting that, any more than a couple is too many. But despite apparently being more or less generated out of nowhere during this period, some, although by no means all, of these collective nouns did catch on. And I'm going to talk through some of those and the origins of many more of our collective nouns after a quick word about this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Now, Squarespace helped me to set up my website, robwords.com, and they can help you too because they empower individuals to create their online web presence or launch their passion project. It's very simple. You just pick up a template and you're off. You can make it your own with whatever color scheme you want. I went for black, white and yellow, and the designs are really easily customizable, and I love the way that you can just drag and drop things around. There are also powerful blogging tools so you can easily post videos, articles, or link to your social media. And then Squarespace's analytics will tell you how many people have visited your site and from where. So head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/RobWords to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now, back to some of the weird and wonderful collective nouns we've been left with then. So, an enjoyable one to say is a gaggle of geese. You've probably heard it, and it does appear to have been coined in the late 15th century. I suppose it's onomatopoeic and comes from the sound that geese sort of make. A gaggle of geese is in the Book of Saint Albans, but it didn't immediately die out like most of the others. You could then find uses of it over the centuries that followed and up to the present day. Another one that caught on from the Book of Saint Albans was the word litter to refer to a group of newborn animals. The book refers to a litter of whelpies, which are young dogs or wolves. That was actually used by Shakespeare and has been in continuous usage ever since. Incidentally, the Book of Saint Albans also has a term for young cats. It says a kindle. Yes, a kindle of kittens. Kindle was a small child, or kind. German actually still has the word kindle. I drink this beer sometimes with a creepy little lad popping out of a beer jug. I don't know what the idea is there. Are we supposed to be drinking him? Anyway, I appear to have been sidetracked by beer again. Back on track. A murmuration of starlings took up residence in the public consciousness in the 15th century, with references recorded through to the present day, and you may have come across that one. The brilliant bike of bees retained its currency right through to the late 19th century, which might be why you haven't heard of it, but it was being used right up until the point when bike started to mean bicycle. However, most of the terms generated in the 15th century disappeared, never to be used again. So long a shrewdness of apes. Except, of course, in articles or silly little videos like this one about weird 15th century collective nouns. But as well as those that died and those that lived on, there is a third category, those that have been resurrected. And a lot of the unusual collective nouns that you may be aware of fall into this category. Among them is a murder of crows. This creepy and rather morbid term, perhaps a reference to the screaming sound that crows make or their tendency to linger around the corpses of other animals. It's unpleasant, whatever way you think about it. But a murder of crows was among those coined in the 15th century. There are, however, no traces of it being used for the 500 years that followed. Then, all of a sudden, bam, in the 20th century, it's back. It would appear that every half a millennium or so we develop a fashion for using strange collective terms, because much as there was a frenzy to create them back in the 1400s, in the 1900s there appears to have been an extraordinary effort to resurrect them. Another that has received the same treatment is a parliament of owls, which conjures up a frankly adorable image. You can also have a parliament of rooks as well. That usage of parliament disappeared for hundreds of years, only to be brought back vividly to life in the 20th century in ornithology books, so books about birds. Also on this list, although I must say I'd never heard of it before researching this video, is an unkindness of ravens. Again, all over the place in the 1400s, nothing for 500 years, then cor blimey, it's back. Have you noticed that so many of these words seem to be bird related? Well, I was wondering if bird watchers actually make use of these. So I asked the UK's Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, the RSPB, and they kindly asked around for me. They came back with an answer and said, birders would rarely use these collective terms. They would more likely state the number of birds they've seen or an estimate. So they need a bit more precision than a general murder of crows. Okay, so why are so many of these words about birds if they're not being used by people who talk about birds? Of course, the main reason is that they were mainly coined in books about hawking, plus in 15th century England, birds were as exciting as the British wildlife got. I mean, the Book of Saint Albans does include a leap of leopards, but I bet very few people ever had cause to use it. Anyway, looking beyond the coining frenzy of the 15th century, there are, of course, well-established collective nouns that we do use and with histories that extend well back beyond the 1400s. Take, for example, the word school, used to refer to a group of fish. Now, Old English, being spoken, up until the 11th century, 1,000 years ago, had the word skolu, meaning a group. It's thought that even then, in nautical circles, it may also have been used specifically for a group of fish. Later, we end up with the word school, like we have now, which is believed to have been influenced by this Dutch word. It therefore has a different root to the school where you go to learn. That one comes from this thoroughly Greek word. Anyway, back to fish. We appear to have re-imported the Dutch word in the 16th century and turned it into the wholly unnecessary shoal. So that's why we have school and shoal, which are basically interchangeable. School could also refer to a group of whales, but these days people seem to prefer the word pod, which was originally used for dolphins and the like. It appears that we've made the change on purpose to stress that whales are mammals, not fish. Out of the water and onto dry land, and indeed up in the sky, let's talk about the word flock. Now, flock is used for birds, sheep, goats and Christians, I suppose. And it goes all the way back to Old English too, where it was spelt like that. Also, the Vikings hanging around in England and Scotland would have had the word flocker in Old Norse. Back then, it meant an assemblage of people, not just followers of Christ though, and is possibly related to the word folk. Now be careful with this next one. It's swarm. Now I know this one must go way back because here in Germany the word is Schwarm, and indeed it does. Old English had it in this form here, and there are a lot of really interesting theories about where it comes from. One is that it's related to the Sanskrit svarati, meaning sound, and also the Latin word susurrus and Low German surren, which refer specifically to a humming sound. Makes sense for a bunch of buzzy bees, right? Another theory is that swarm originally referred to the movement of the group, specifically the agitated, erratic motions of the swarm. There's actually this Norwegian dialect word, apparently, svarme, that means to be sort of giddy. This would also mean that swarm has the same root as swerve. Now I just want to swerve in a different direction and talk about some of the fraudsters out there. Look around the internet as I've just done, and you'll find lots of lists of hilarious collective nouns, but some of the ones they give you on these lists, I just can't find any trace of them having been ever used anywhere. And you can tell by looking at them that they weren't coined in the 15th century in England. Please put me straight if you've ever heard anyone actually refer to a rumba of rattlesnakes, a shiver of sharks, supposedly because seeing one makes you shiver, a crash of rhinos, I do love the sound of it, but not sure that's a genuine one, and lastly, a glaring of cats. Now this one has definitely done the rounds, but the slot for flimsy feline collective nouns is already oversubscribed with the Kindle of kittens that we already spoke about, and clowder of cats. Clowder, incidentally, is just a variant of clutter. Now if I've missed your favourites, stick it in the comments. I'd also welcome some of your own creations perhaps. I can get the ball rolling with an oversubscription of YouTubers. If you have enjoyed this video, I think you're really going to like my video about so-called ghost words, the words that should never have made it into the dictionary. Or, just let YouTube tell you which of my videos to watch next, and I'll see you over there. Thanks for watching.